Hello. ఎవరన్నా లైవ్ వేసాలని Good afternoon. Welcome to VANIK-IAS. We'll start discussing current affairs of today. First topic is science and technology. That is, recently the Council of European Union adopted a set of recommendations to strengthen action against antimicrobial resistance. So, what is this antimicrobial resistance? It is one of the top 10 global health crises. That is, it occurs because of when bacteria, viruses, or fungi or parasites change over time and no longer respond to medicines, making infections harder to treat and increasing the risk of disease spread and severe illness and death. It occurs. Why antimicrobial resistance occurs? Okay, why antimicrobial resistance occurs? The reason is when antibiotics are taken improperly or self medication. That means you will prescribe medicine to yourself rather than consulting a doctor, or over medication, overuse of antibiotics, improper use of antibiotics. All these problems can lead to antimicrobial resistance. And if antimicrobial resistance occurs, then the medicines will not work. Suppose you are taking medicines for malaria, that will not work, or tuberculosis, that will not work, and the treatment cost will increase. You need some higher doses, so the diagnosis and the infections will be harder to treat. Treatment will not be easy, right? And resistant microbes can pass between animals, plants, and foods and the environment. And inside your body, those microbes, they will become resistant to medicines, and they will also transmit to other human beings, and they will also transmit to some plants or other animals. So the exchange also occurs. So if you are taking antibiotics frequently, or antibiotics if you are taking antibiotics rather than it is prescribed, right, when it is not necessary, then you are not only threat to yourself, to you are also threat to other person in the society, right? So what are the challenges of AMR? The phenomenon has many health and economic implications, which is estimated 4.9 million deaths associated with antimicrobial resistance in 2019. Only 2019 around 5 million deaths, and that is 50 lakh deaths associated with antimicrobial resistance in 2019. Estimated 35,000 people die each year in the European Union Economic Area as a direct consequence of infection due to bacterial resistance antibiotics. Bacteria resistant antibiotics. For example, WHO has given distributed malaria medicine throughout the world. After many years, it has found out that anti-malarial resistance has developed in by chloroquine medicine. Similarly, by WHO has also prescribed this tuberculosis. It has also seen that in 85% of the cases, 85% of tuberculosis patients, antimicrobial resistance has developed and medicines are not working. Sometimes there is also multi-drug resistance occurs. That is what we call a superbug. So experts predict that if the problem remains unsolved, 10 million people could die as a result by 2050. By 2050, 10 million people could die. So it's a big problem, it's a big health crisis. Frequent use of antibiotics, doctors are prescribing frequent use of antibiotics. Also, many medicine stores, they are prescribing frequent use of antibiotics. Many people, they consume frequent use of antibiotics by self-medication. So the consumption is increasing, right? And that become a health crisis, emerging as a big health crisis in the world. So what are the causes of antibiotics? Antibiotic resistance occurs when bacteria evolve to evade antibiotics. Overuse or misuse of antibiotics is the biggest driver of the resistance. Overuse or misuse. In both cases of antimicrobial resistance, the problem can occur. Okay. Just next. Next is that means more we use antibiotics, the worse problem antibiotic resistance becomes. Other drivers of antimicrobial resistance includes lack of access to clean water, sanitation and hygiene (WAS) for both humans and animals. That will also lead to antimicrobial resistance. So sanitation is also an issue that may cause antimicrobial resistance, because if the sanitation is not proper, the transmission of antimicrobial bacteria or viruses would be easier. Then a poor infection and disease prevention and control in healthcare facilities and farms. In case of medical facilities, if the waste are not treated properly and poor and disease prevention measures, if that is not addressed properly, then chances is that okay, then chances is that antimicrobial resistance will prevail. Then poor access to quality, affordable medicines and vaccines and diagnostics. Lack of awareness and knowledge. This all may lead to antimicrobial resistance. Lack of awareness and knowledge. How does it work? Antibiotics works by binding into a specific target protein on a bacteria, then entering to kill it from inside. Work by binding a specific target protein on a bacteria, then entering to kill it from inside. Penicillin, for example, weakens the bacterial cell wall, causing cell to disintegrate. So many antibiotics they affect the cell walls, they damage the cells, and the damages also the immune system, because antibiotics cannot distinguish between the good health, between a good cell and a bad cell, between a good bacteria and bad bacteria. There are also various microorganisms inside our body who function as a resistance to external disease, but antibiotics kill all of them because it cannot distinguish. The most common ways of bacteria evade antibiotics come from the mutations that allow them to stop drugs from binding to the bacteria. So mutations occurs in case of bacteria or viruses, and that become dangerous. It's like a bacteria change the locks to antibiotics. It no longer opens the cell door. After that, so antibiotics will not work. Bacteria can also achieve resistance by producing proteins that inactivate or modify the antibiotic. That will also antibiotics that will modify the antibiotic or that will inactivate the antibiotic. This may also happen. So it no longer binds to the bacteria. On the target protein is mutated, so the antibiotic can no longer to bind it. But most of all, when bacteria evolves many of the mechanisms to back up, so even if you overcome one, other resistances might fill the gap. So various bacteria they behave differently. Some changes they mutates and antimicrobial resistance is created inside body if you are consuming antibiotics. So antibiotics should be consumed only when requirement is the requirement is highly necessary. Okay. Then lots of germs and some are drug resistant. Antibiotics kill bacteria causing the illness as well as the good bacteria, protecting the body from infection. The drug resistant bacteria now able to grow and take over. Some bacteria give their drug resistance to other bacteria. Okay. So when generally antibacterial resistance occurs, so by this method, the antibiotics, the By these methods, the impact of the dead bacteria increases. The impact of the bacteria increases. हाँ हाँ यार एपिक पेन ना अच्छी अच्छा है मैं कर दिया नहीं एपिक पेन ना वैसा नहीं उन्हें देखा जियो पिलाऊं खोलने कटे गले तो हो okay then what is the action of European Union with respect to antimicrobial resistance the commission submitted a proposal on the recommendation of stepping up EU actions to combat AMR in a One Health approach. One Health means that is focusing on environment and thermal. One Health means, right, that is your health, animal health and environment health, all are interlinked. That is One Health. So European Union has started by AMR, by One Health approach, by addressing the environment, by addressing the animal health, by addressing the local person's health. European Union has decided, submitted report to counter the antimicrobial resistance. And focusing on health of humans, animals and environment, it recommended the prudent use of antimicrobials such as antibiotics in human animal health for reducing the risk of microorganisms becoming resistant to medical intervention. So how the problem will be solved? Next, the approach was to adopt because the health of humans, animals and the environment are intrinsically linked. AMR can only overcome through joint efforts across the three areas. The proposal included a series of actions. AMR can only overcome through joint efforts across all the three areas. The proposal included a series of actions to strengthen national action plans against antimicrobial resistance, national action plan against antimicrobial resistance, reinforce surveillance and monitoring of AMR and antimicrobial consumption. So consumption need to be reduced, and by strengthening national action against antimicrobial resistance, they will counter the indiscriminate use of antibiotics and also oversight of the pharmaceuticals to sell antibiotics without the prescription of doctors. Okay, so reinforce monitoring and surveillance of antimicrobial consumption so that the consumption will not increase. That will be also focused. Next, strengthen infection prevention by developing sanitation and control as well as antimicrobial stewardship and prudent use of antibiotics. The proper use of antibiotics must be popularized, right? Next, recommend the targets of AMC and AMR in human health. So creating awareness, improve awareness and creating education and training of the common man and also the medical professionals. Foster research and development incentive for innovation and access to microbials and other AMR medical countermeasures. So how AMR can be prevented? Government can focus on incentives on innovation, and by research and development, government must foster the research to counter the antimicrobial resistance. Then increase cooperation, enhance global actions against corruption, so against antimicrobial resistance. So global actions, as it is a big threat to the humanity, so it's a big challenge to the health of public throughout the world. So global collaboration will be helpful. The target is surveillance and monitoring. Target called for closing existing surveillance and monitoring gaps and ensuring the completeness of data, including real-time information. It also includes timely access to data on both AMR and AMC at levels like community hospitals and long-term care hospitals. So timely access of data on both AMR. That means how many people are suffering from AMR or facing such type of issues, they will be addressed. Then reducing consumption of antibiotics, reducing total consumption of antibiotics in humans by 20% in the union compared to the baseline year of 2019 is another target. So there is specific target of 20% reduction in the antibiotics. This should be applicable for the community and hospital sectors combined, including in long-term care facilities and home care settings. Our classification of WHO. A member states must ensure that at least 65% of the total consumption of antibiotics in human belongs to access group of antibiotics defined as our classification of WHO. So there is a classification that some member states that ensures 65% of total consumption of antibiotics in human belongs to access group of antibiotics. The member state also mentions at least 65% of total consumption. Okay, so at least 65% total consumption should be our classification. That means those who are by proper recommendation of the medical professionals. Farm to fork strategy. The members must also put out place appropriate measures to contribute to the farm to fork strategy and zero pollution action plan to target 50% reduction in the overall EU sales of antimicrobials. Then I will also target that these pharmaceutical industries they will to reduce the antimicrobial medicine sale by 50%. The, that is the farm to fork strategy. And the climate impact of primary production while ensuring fair economic returns for the farmers. Next question. What are the measures taken to rising antimicrobial resistance in India? National Program on AMR Containment. It was launched during the 12th Five-Year Plan in 2012 and 17. National Program for Antimicrobial Containment. National Action Plan for Antimicrobial Resistance. These are the steps that have been taken. It has a focus on the One Health approach. One Health approach means your environment health, your animal health, and your health all are interlinked. So they must be uh, they all are interlinked. So next, AMR Surveillance Network. ICMR has established AMR Surveillance and Research Network in 2013 to generate evidence and capture trends and pattern drug resistant infections in the country. So ICMR, that is Indian Council for Medical Research, it can also work significantly to reduce the menace of AMR. AMR research and international collaboration. So collaboration can also be done with other countries who have expertise with respect to tackling research and innovation and tackling diseases like AMR. ICMR has also initiatives to develop new drugs, medicines through international collaboration in order to strengthen the medical research in AMR. ICMR is also collaborating with other countries. India's next action plan for containment of AMR. Various action plans to create awareness and to stringent punishment for selling antibiotics without the recommendation of doctors is also be enforced. It focuses on integrated health approach and involves coordination at the state, national and the international level. Okay. Okay, key priority of National Health Policy 2017. In its National Health Policy 2017, India has identified managing AMR as a key priority, and since then, the Health Ministry has taken several initiatives to nip the epidemic that is growing fast globally. So, what are the suggestions? Scientists have been working on the issue for many different angles. One approach is to modify antibiotics, old antibiotics, so that they can overcome the resistance. So either you have to, so old antibiotics they need to be changed. Then next issue is groundwater extractions has tilted Earth's spin. According to new study, humans have caused marked tilts in the Earth axis by pumping water out of the ground. So there is change in axis of the Earth. Findings of study: groundwater pumping has tilted the planet nearly 80 centimeters east. So around 80 cm east has tilted between 1993 and 2010 alone. The water circulated across the planet determines how mass is distributed across the planet determines how Mars is distributed. Scientists has predicted that between 1993 and 2010, people pumped 2,150 gigatons of groundwater or more than 6 millimeters of sea level increase, so that they have used it. The planet's geographical north and south poles, where its axis intersects the surface, however, are not fixed. The axis and hence the poles fluctuate due to variations of Earth mass distribution. In the past, the poles drift only caused by natural forces like ocean currents or convection of heated rock deep beneath the earth. But new research piece the distribution of groundwater as primary culprit for the drift. So now it is experienced that because of groundwater extraction, earth is getting tilted, right? The new study researchers analyze changes fast by accounting for just ice sheets and glaciers, then by adding different groundwater retribution scenarios. They have calculated that it is being tilted and huge amount of groundwater are being extracted. In 2021 study published in the Journal of Geographical Research, letters found that direction of the polar drift moved from southward to eastward in 1995, and that average drift speed is 17 times quicker than from 1981 to 1995. So the changes are rapid and the changes are occurring. This is how the tiltation occurs, right? Slightly tilted towards the eastward shifts the location of Earth's north and south poles. It's called polar drift. So polar drift has occurred. The Earth's axis. The Earth's axis of rotation is a line along which it spins around itself and revolves around the sun. The points on which the axis intersects the planet's surface are the geographical north and south poles. The location of the poles is not fixed. However, as the axis moves due to changes on how the Earth is distributed, Earth's mass is distributed around the planet. Thus, the poles move when the axis moves, and it is called as polar motion. So, polar motion occurs in location of poles, and generally the location of poles is not fixed. According to NASA, data from 20th century shows that the spin axis drifted about 10 centimeter per year, meaning over a century, polar motion exceeded 10 meters. Generally, polar motion is caused by changes in the hydrosphere, atmosphere, and oceans or solid earth. But now the climate change is adding to the degree to which the polar wander. So generally, because of climate change and various huge amount of groundwater extraction, now the earth is getting tilted and there is polar motion occurs, and the level of and the intensity of this tilting is much higher than the 17 times higher than the previous decade. What will be the impact? Pronounced shift on the earth axis of rotation can impact our planet's climate. Noted the study. So climate change can occur also because of it. Earth rotational pole normally changes by several meters within a year. So changes due to groundwater pumping don't run the risk of shifting seasons. But on geologic time scales, polar drift can have an impact on the climate. So it can if so that may also change our climate. That may also induce climate change. And if climate change occurs, if any disturbance on the existing climate cycle occurs, then that will the repercussions will be maybe the repercussions will be severe, right? Retributing water from the mid latitudes significantly influence the polar drift. Therefore, location of determines the polar drift. During the study period, most of the retribution occurred in northwestern North America, northwestern India, both located at mid latitudes. Change to Earth axis is not large enough that it will affect daily life. It could change the length of the day we experience, but only by milliseconds. So, what to do? Attempts to slow groundwater depletion rates, especially in those sensitive regions, could alter the change in drift, but if such conservation approaches are sustained for decades. So, for decades of sustainable approach to groundwater extraction or reduction of groundwater extraction can lead to the to bring back to the original situation. But it has to be continued for decades, and it is not going to be, because if you will not extract the groundwater, then obviously what you need some alternate sources of water. India has 17% of world population, and hardly we have 4% of groundwater, the 4% of groundwater, and that creates a crisis. So we do not have sufficient groundwater, so we don't have sufficient resources to meet our needs, and our needs are also increasing. So the possibility that groundwater sources, utilization of groundwater will increase in the recent years, in further years than the decline. Next, Gita Press awarded Gandhi Peace Prize. The Gandhi Peace Prize of the year 2021 is being conferred on Gita Press, Gorakhpur by PM Modi led jury. Gita Press is one of the world's largest publishers of Bhagavad Gita, Ramayana, and the Upanishads. Have published 41 crore books in 14 languages, including 16 crore Bhagavad Gita. It completes 100 years of establishment in 2023. The institution has never relied on advertisement in its publication for revenue generation. Various awards it has got in past, that is President of South Africa Nelson Mandela, social worker Baba Amte, Archbishop Desmond Tutu of South Africa, environmental Chandi Prasad Bhatt, Sultan Qaboos bin Said Al Said Oman, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman Bangladesh. So these are the various awards Gita Press has already got it. Also includes organizations such as ISRO, Ramakrishna Mission, Gramin Bank of Bangladesh, Vivekananda Kendra, Kanyakumari, Akshay Patra, Bengaluru, Ekam Vision Trust, India, Sulabh International, New Delhi. So all these prizes Gita Press has got it, and recently it has got Gandhi Peace Prize. Now, what is Gandhi Peace Prize? It is an annual award issued by Government of India 1995 on the occasion of 125th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi as a tribute to the ideals espoused by Mahatma Gandhi. So, what is the eligibility? This is the annual award given to individuals and institutions for their contribution towards social, economic, political transformation through non-violence and other Gandhian methods. The award is open to all persons regardless of nationality, race, language, and caste and creed. Rewards. The reward carried amount 1 crore, a citation, a plaque, and exquisite traditional handicraft and handloom item. Selection committee. The jury chaired by Prime Minister and comprises of two ex officio members, namely Chief Justice of India and leader of the single largest opposition party Lok Sabha. Two eminent members are also the party jury, Speaker of the Lok Sabha, founder of the Sulabh International and founder of Sulabh International Social Service Organization. So they have got the Gandhian idea. Okay. World Refugee Day 2023. World Refugee Day 2023 celebrated annually on June 20, honor to courage the tenacity of refugees all across the world. The United Nations observes this day as a memory of all refugees who are compelled to leave their homes. Right. So that's why it is observed throughout the world. Okay. The theme was hope away from home. They have left their home. The theme is the hope away from home. The significance is that they recognize the courage and resilience of refugees, as well as the challenges they encounter uh, while trying to find safety and start of new lives. So every government should respect the refugee, the natural rights of the refugees, and to uphold their rights, to respect the marginalized people, and fostering compassion and empathy and empathy for their struggles. Okay, okay. So the lectures end here, and like this video and share and subscribe to VANIK-IAS. Thank you.